Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin in just a moment with the Shalom Aleichem. I always enjoy this song. The thought that angels are hurrying in to your home and my home and the shul because angels want to hear us sing lifts me up. That's the power of our song, that angels want to be with us. The Shalom Aleichem in the siddur on page number 5. And if you don't yet have a siddur, perhaps just sing along. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitchem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And before we turn to the L'Chun Ranana, which will be on page number 11, I'm introducing a piece that many people are familiar with. It's the Ma Tovu, a different melody. Remember that you are bringing your home into ours. And each and every person who's joining this night is bringing her or his home into ours, home upon home upon home, being connected, a network of homes. Ma Tovu Alech Yaakov, how beautiful it is that your houses are here with us. Jacob, Ma Tovu Alech Yaakov. Danny Messing.
Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma Tovu, Ma Tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Vani berov chastecha, Ahavo beitecha, Eshtachave lecha al kodshecha, Le'yiratecha, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha, umekom mishkan kevodecha, mishkan kvodecha, vani eshtachave bechra'a, ebrecha lifnei Adonai, osi, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, משכנותיך ישראל, מה טוב, מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, משכנותיך
On page 11, the left side in the margin before the Chunaranana, a passage entitled Pilgrimage. We may understand our days to be a pilgrimage in time, from the 6 days of the work week to the experience of a day of rest, holy time. The generation that left Egypt and wandered in the wilderness never reached its destination, the place of God's rest. But every Friday evening, we have the opportunity to make the journey anew, this time with an openness that will enable us to truly enter the land and to come close to the divine. And perhaps this explains how and why so much of Jewish prayer is focused on the collective, the group. Where we came from was slavery, and we all left that experience, and each one followed his or her own path, but we were a collective. And that imprint has been with us for the past 3,300 years, each one of us walking his or her own path, but always within the mindset of being part of a community. It's we, it's us. No individual from a Jewish point of view is in the challenge of the daily life experience by himself or herself. No Jew is alone. We're always right next to each other. And that's why L'chuna Ranana on page 11 is collective. Come on, let's sing. Different melody, because every once in a while we've got to change it up a little bit, but I think you'll find it a little bouncy. L'chuna Ranana, Craig Taubman is joining us this evening.
לכו לכו נרננה נרננה לאדוני נריע נריע צור ישענו לכו לכו נרננה נרננה לאדוני נריע נריע צור ישענו הנקמה פניו ותודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו לכו לכו נרננה נרננה לאדוני נריע נריע לצור ישענו לכו לכו נרננה נרננה לאדוני נריע נריע לצור ישענו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו הנקמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו
On the English side, come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us, the top of page 12. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert. when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. For years, I've heard this passage in my ears. In fact, growing up as a child, like many of us, I'm familiar with this siddur. And you may remember the phrase, harden not your hearts like at Meribah and Massah. Remember that from the old conservative siddur? And on many occasions I've wondered, why do we have that phrase at the opening of the Friday evening service? And it occurs to me, it's not to bring us down, but it's to bring us up. Because the goal of this psalm in the siddur is to point out where and how we could do better. Don't be hard-hearted. You remember those other people who were hard-hearted and they influenced a group of people negatively? And now ask yourself as an individual here during these times, do you wish to be a hard-hearted person, or do you want your heart to be loving and caring and supple and flexible? And that's why inside this phrase is actually hope and optimism. We continue in the siddur, and if you will, turn to page number 14, the English and then the Hebrew. The bottom stanza. The heavens shall be glad and the earth rejoice, the sea and its fullness roar, the meadows and all that grows in them exult. Even the trees of the forest shall sing praise as Adonai comes to judge the earth, judging lands with righteousness and peoples with divine truth. And on the facing side, Yismechu Hashmayim. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. Yeramayam, 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 umalo. Yeramayam, 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 umalo. Yeramayam, 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 umalo. Yeramayam, 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 umalo. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. And on page number 17, the English, the first part of this psalm on page number 17. A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song. For Adonai has wrought wonders. God's right hand and holy arm have brought deliverance. Adonai declared deliverance. As nations looked on, God's righteousness was revealed. God dealt faithfully and kindly with the house of Israel. The very ends of the earth saw our God's saving power. On page number 20, another excerpt from the Psalms. Moses and Aaron among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name, called to you, and you answered them. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. You answered them, Adonai, our God. You were a forgiving God to them. And let's stop there. And now let's go back and decode this part of the psalm. Moses and Aaron among God's priests, Samuel among those who called upon the divine name. Called upon the divine name is prayer. Samuel was one who led people in prayer, but we also pray. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. Who else is keeping the law and the covenant? We are. And this psalm brings to mind that you and I are part of a community that began in the days of Moses and Aaron and Samuel. And what are we creating right now at this time and in the days and the months and the years ahead? A community that shall continue. And that's what Torah and that's what Brit is all about. And now on page 21. Mizmor LeDavid, Havulatonai b'nei Elim, Havulatonai kavod v'oz, Havulatonai kavod shemo, Ishtachavulatonai b'hadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamoyim el kavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shaver arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kamo egel Lebanon the Sirion, Kamo ben reimim. Kol Adonai chosev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yechol elayolot, Vayechesof ye'arot, Uvehechalot kulo omer kavod, Adonai lamabul yashav, Vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. On page 23, L'Charodi, and again, Craig is joining us this evening for L'Charodi. And we remember that at the end of the L'Charodi, which is the Bowie stanza, wherever you are, in your own home or elsewhere, we rise and we face the door. Our body posture is reminding us to welcome Shabbos. Shabbos is not just of the mind or the perspective or the heart. Shabbos embraces all of us. So we move our bodies a bit. We shift even out of our seat if we're able to do so. And Shabbos joins us. L'Charodi on page 23, the first three stanzas, and then page 25, the last stanza.
Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. La 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi anu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemu tiferet v'lithila la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha, mirosh mikedem nesucha, sov ma'aseh b'machshava tchila la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Mikdash melech ir melucha, kumitzei בתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך לה 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 לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Please rise, page 25, go in.
בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Remaining standing for a moment, and then the Borchu. Turning to page 28. We just sang Lecha Dodi. And the phrase at the very end is, Pnei Shabbat Nekabbalah. Let's go out and, if you can, literally see the face of Shabbos. See the face of Shabbos. What kind of a face would Shabbat have? Allow your thoughts to just wander for a moment. And maybe if we look at the last part of the psalm for Shabbat, we can gain a new understanding. So now we're on page 28. It's the last two stanzas. The psalm that's associated with Shabbat itself. Page 28. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. The psalm for Shabbat concludes with a picture of righteous people. And it doesn't say righteous Jews, it says righteous people. By the way, you don't have to be Jewish to be righteous. And halavai, more Jews would be righteous. This is the recipe for being righteous. To be enough of who you are as the right kind of person that God would see you as deserving of being invited into God's own courtyard. And if you were invited into God's own courtyard, how would you be appearing? How would you conduct yourself? What would be the manner, the style of your life, the way you interact with other people, with the world itself? And all that's in the psalm that's associated with Shabbat. So what would be on Shabbat's own face? A sense of righteousness, a glow, a confidence of making the world better, of celebrating reality. The Borchu. If able to rise, you're invited to rise at this time. Page 39b. Baruchu et Adonai Amavorach. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. The first bracha in the English side, the bottom of 39b. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the seventh day, calling this day from one evening to the next the holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest in all its holiness to your people Israel, creator of day and night, rolling light before darkness and darkness from light, and making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamidim L'Chalein Olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. On page 40. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Havta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadita Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachveinu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki em chayenu v'orech yameinu Va'orech yameinu, u'v'hem negei yomam v'layla. V'avatecha al tasir mimenu la'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. We are children of the covenant, which means that we love God. And God loves us as well. We just sang this prayer, asserting that God's love for us is woven into the fabric of the universe itself. And we love God. Prior to the Shema, a song.
Love your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul. Love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Where you live, where you lie, where you stumble, where you thrive, with all you speak, with all you know, with all your soul. Be like God, one like God, in love and life. Be like God, love like God, with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. When you seek, when you soar, when you breathe and breathe no more, love your God, be with God, go with God.
page 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha, b'beitecha, v'alechtecha, v'aderech, v'shachbecha, v'kumecha, v'kishartam la'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha. Adonai Elohechem emet. Michamocha is on page number 44. It's the fourth line down. It's an exclamation of excitement, of wonderment. How could there be anything beyond the one, the only, which we call by the first name? You and I call God by God's first name. We say, hello, Adonai, how are you today? Yeah, I'm doing okay. Thanks. Checking in. See you later. We Jews on a first-name basis with the creator of the universe. That's the Michamocha. Michamocha poelim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokea yam lifnei Moshe, zeli anu v'yamro, Adonai yimloch la'olam voed, v'ne'emar, kifada Adonai et Yaakov, ugalom yad chazak mimeno, baruch ata Adonai, Gaal Yisrael. In a moment, on page 45 on the English side, a prayer which never gets old. For every night, each of us needs to know that he or she is going to lay his or her head down on the pillow and be secure and calm and at rest. And there are many who are not secure and calm and at rest. And so we include them in our prayers. And the first word is Hashkivenu, followed by the English. Hashkivenu, Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully. Awaken us to life, O Sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us. Remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you, God, watch over and deliver us. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and our coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. On page 46, V'shamro v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. B'nei uvein b'nei Yisrael ot hi leolam, ot hi leolam, ot hi leolam. V'shamro v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et ha'aretz v'shamro v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, v'shamro v'nei Yisrael et Shabbat la'asot et Shabbat ledorotam barit olam. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, Amen. Be'alma divrach yoter mechutei, v'chayechon, v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvisman kariv, v'imero, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach, la'olam li'ol me'el maya, yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yinaseh v'yidhadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudasha brichu le'la mekor b'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'olma v'yimero, Amen. In just a little while, when the sun sets fully, this Shabbos officially begins. And this Shabbos has a nickname. It's the seventh Shabbos of consolation, the seventh Shabbos of comfort. We nickname Shabbats. Ask yourself what it means to live as part of a community wherein we name a part of time to be a time of comfort and consolation. What does that say inside yourself? That you're part of a nation that for centuries has called this Shabbos, the one just before Rosh Hashanah, the seventh, the ultimate Shabbos, hoping for you and me to gain comfort in our lives as we transition from last year moving into the next year. And this reiterates a very important message, which is all over Rosh Hashanah, that Judaism is an optimistic tradition. And in every aspect of our system, prayer, holidays, calendar, and more, we want the best for all of us, beginning with each of us. We rise the traditional prayer on pages 47 through 52, or a few moments of silent meditation. we offer the Shalom Rav. It's a prayer put to a melody by Meir Finkelstein. The words are on page 51. It's the last bracha of the Amida in the afternoon and evening service. Every single day of the year, we offer an Amida in the morning, afternoon, and evening. In the morning, we have the Sim Shalom, the prayer of place peace in the world, O God. In the afternoon and evening services, we have the prayer Shalom Rav. And now Shalom Rav, again, it's on page 51, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim le'olam. Shalom, כי אתה הוא מלך, מלך אדום, לכל השלום. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם, תשים לעולם, תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל.
The Kiddush Shalem is on page number 54. Yitkaral v'yitkara Shemei Rabba, Amen. Be'alma divrach yitzvimru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba mevarach, v'alam li'almei almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitzavidarar v'yitzavidarar Shemei Kudusha, B'richu le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechamata, tamir mama v'imiru, Amen. תתקבל ספמירו, אמן, יש ספמירו, אמן, עושה שבמה ויעשה שלום, ספמירו, amen. We just sang the Shalom Rav with Meir Finkelstein, which is that beautiful prayer of great peace. We just ended the Kaddish Shalem with two little prayers of peace. Peace is the most sought after, the most delighted of all possible elements within Jewish life, within Jewish tradition. And you and I are seeing in our own eyes peace unfolding. Just next week, we're going to have the Abraham Accord signed between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Great day in the morning, more peace unfolding. considering what's going on in the world today, I never would have expected in these ever-harshening political climes that there'd be peace between Israel and another Arab country. And yes, the UAE is going to be signing a document. And today we learned that Bahrain is going to be joining as well. Wow, wherever we look, another country wants to become friends with Israel. What a glorious experience. Naysayers will say, oh, they're small, they're tiny, Bahrain is just an island, what's the big deal? Look, in my book, peace with anyone and everyone is the greatest possible gift of all. And Israel, having been isolated from the world community and the regional community for so many decades, should be jumping at and is euphoric over yet two more possibilities of peace, of friendship, cessation of hostilities. And all this is happening on September 11th. A moment of silence. Every one of us remembers where he or she was 19 years ago. And every one of us can still feel the anguish, the depths of pain, of physical hurt over the loss that we saw unfolding, the loss that was brought forth because people hate who we are as Americans and our lifestyle and our values system. It's beyond our comprehension. And of the thousands, tens of thousands of families that are still in sorrow and agony over this, we can only share our hope and our love and our prayer. And this day is a holy day because of the loss and because of our need to come forward and to extend ourselves in support and in remembrance and in compassion. And so to have these announcements of peace unfolding on and near September 11th for me is a fulfillment. It's a dream. Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are going to be shaking hands and establishing inroads towards building peace. They're reaching out. And you may not know it, but two other entities, two other parties that have been not getting along for quite a long time are now coming forth as well. And you might say that they're even motivated by the emerging relations between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain. And those two entities are Hamas and Fatah. And you may not know, but Hamas and Fatah, ever since 2007, when Hamas took over Gaza, have been in conflict with each other. And it hasn't always been on the front pages of the newspaper, but Hamas and Fatah both want to represent the Palestinian people. Palestinians living in Gaza, Palestinians living in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, choose your terms. But now, motivated by the inroads of emerging peace between the UAE and Israel and Bahrain, Hamas and Fatah are now saying, let's come together and let's build ourselves as a united front to fight for Palestinians, which translation means to ramp up attacks against Israeli civilians. And so the contrast here, in my mind, is absolutely obscene. In this season of approaching September 11th, as Israel and the UAE and now Bahrain have been trying to develop a way of understanding, of building cooperation, of friendship, of laying down elements of hostility and violence, two other parties are saying, no, we're going to pick up those elements of violence and we're going to amplify them, against the backdrop of September 11th. And in my head is spinning a phrase that comes out of this week's Torah reading, which is named Nitzavim. Moses is speaking to the people of Israel as they're about to leave Yarden, Moab, Jordan, and cross over the Jordan River. And he says, you have a choice. And your choice is Ra, evil or wickedness, and Mavet, death, or Tov, good, and Chaim, life. What will you choose, O Israel? Ra and Mavet, death and wickedness and evil, or Tov and Chaim, goodness and life? And then in just a little bit later within the same Torah reading, you might say that the Torah reading presents God as speaking, and God is offering the people of Israel a choice to make. Do you want to be a people committed to bracha, sense of blessing, blessedness, or klala, being cursed? It's up to you how each of you, how all of you will build your life. And these words are spinning in my head because now, 3,300 years later, on the exact same weekend as Moses' and God's initial offering of perspective, goodness and life, or wickedness and death, Israel and the UAE and Bahrain are saying, we're going to live a life of goodness and of blessing and of building and of construction and beauty and collaboration, which will feed and heal. And Hamas and Fatah are saying, no, we want to live a life of being cursed because we want to initiate violence and wickedness and death. And all this surrounding the time period of September 11th, and all this on the threshold 1 week away from Rosh Hashanah, when we're building a whole new calendar, a whole new perspective. Let's celebrate the opportunity of building life and goodness and beauty, which is what we have before us with the new Abraham Accord. And let's be proud of what it means to be daughters and sons of Abraham, the people who brought the idea of choosing between bracha and klala, blessing and being cursed. May we all choose rightly. And at some point in the future, may those who are choosing wrongly finally learn the lesson of the beauty of living a life of goodness, of Tov and Chaim. Shabbat Shalom. And now we rise for Kiddush. If you have a glass of wine, please join me. The Kiddush is on page number 55. If you have a glass of wine, feel free to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yavav ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim Kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahaval v'ratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat. And perhaps you have a piece of bread, and you can join in with us for the hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. If you will, remaining standing for the Aleinu on page number 56. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol Latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kagoye aratzot velo samanu kimishpachot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem vegoralenu kechol hamonam V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu She'u noteh shamayim v'yoser haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mimal u'shchinatu zo begavei meromim Hu Eloheinu ein od Met malkeinu levezulato kakatu betorato v'yadata yom v'shevota el levavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat ein od V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yihye Adonai echad U'shemo echad. We have the Mourner's Kaddish before us now on page number 58. And we have a list of people whom we are remembering here within our shul. If you know of someone else whose name you'd like to mention, please do so at this time. On this Shabbat, we remember with great love Jacob H. Zuckerman, Abraham Stein, Aaron S. Jaffa, Sanford Polanski, Jacob Koffler, Bertha Plotka, Martin Dreyfus, Bruce David Lubell, Rosa Miller, Ida Grace Parkman, Miriam Tobin, Joseph Olinsky. We remember Mendel Wallman, Lillian Rudnick, Murray Gollum, Catherine Malloy. And it is September 11th, and our thoughts turn to all those who are taken from all of us. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo. Amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol be'Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach la'olam ololmei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. We extend our prayers to God for all those families, all those loved ones whose hearts are filled with grief. May you have shalom. A sentence on the bottom of page 59 calls out as we approach Rosh Hashanah. If only I could trust that I would see God's goodness in the land of the living. The person who wrote that may have been living in times of conflict and distress as well. This person writes, if only I could see the goodness, to know that God's goodness is here. And then the next line is a reminder to take heart, because the next line is, place your hope know that there is something beyond your and my experience. And as we approach Rosh Hashanah, know that there is something beyond your and my experience. A couple of brief announcements, and then we'll conclude the service. Remembering that tomorrow, of course, is Araminyan. And then tomorrow evening, we're very excited because we are having a first ever Slichot and Havdalah across the state of Alabama. The information went out today in the emails, and we have people from all across the state of Alabama participating in this very special musical Slichot. It's 7:30 tomorrow evening, and we hope you join in. It's on Zoom. Sunday, here at the shul, in person, 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. If you're so inclined, come by the front of the shul and sit with a mask and your own chair, and maybe have a donut and schmooze with people. We call it Krispy Kreme Roundup. Monday the 14th, 12 to 1 o'clock, Tanakh is on Zoom, and story time for young children is on 5:30 on Zoom. Tuesday the 15th on Zoom, the Spirit series continues. Question is, who can blow the shofar and why? And next Friday is Rosh Hashanah. Gee whiz. It's time to start getting ready, not just in terms of what's going to be on the table, but mentally, what does it mean for us to be opening a brand new year? And so, if you will, we'll conclude with this song. It's called Hillel's Song, and it's a riff off of a teaching in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers. Hillel was once asked, what does it mean? And he says, be a man, the right kind of a person. He didn't speak Yiddish. If he had, the song would say, be a mensch.
Time ago, there lived a great teacher. Hillel was his name. People would ask him all kinds of questions. His wise answers brought him fame. Someone once asked, in a place that is evil, how are we supposed to behave? Hillel thought for a moment, he pondered the question, and this is the answer he gave. B'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim. Hillel omer, ishtadel le'iyot. Has two inclinations, for evil and for good. Hillel knew that it's not always easy to act the way we should. So we look to our parents, our teachers, our children, and we search for the answer inside. And in the struggle between what's right and what's wrong, we let this lesson be our guide. B'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim. Hillel omer, ishtadel le'iyot. Strive to be human. Make peace with your sister and brother. What is hateful to you, do not do to another. others as we travel along the road. But if we remember the words of wise Hillel, we will always know which way to go. When we find ourselves in a place that is evil and we don't know how to behave, if we stop for a moment and ponder the question, we'll remember the answer he gave. B'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim, b'makom she'ein anashim, Hillel omer ishtadel להיות, Hillel omer ishtadel להיות.
For all of us, the opportunity abounds every single day. Hillel Omer, just do the right thing. Be the right kind of person in your own community. And think about it. Each one of us has the opportunity to make an influence on someone else, and someone else, and someone else. Literally, let's bring light into the world. If you'd like to join us, feel free. We'll light candles together and bring Shabbos with light into our experience. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'adin ner shel Shabbat. You are blessed, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, for bringing us holiness and commanding us to light the flames of Shabbos. May you take hold of this holiness, and may you remember that you are loved by God and appreciated by many. May you have a Shabbos of Shalom.